Hey friends, it's Eric Hultgren, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we are talking to Bob and Michelle Fish from Biggby Coffee and One Bigg Island in Space. And as I said, my guests today, Bob and Michelle, how are you today?
Fabulous.
Awesome.
Super fun.
A beautiful day in West Michigan.
Yes, it is. So we are here today to talk about One Bigg Island in Space, and I want to get into all of this. But Michelle, I want to go back a couple steps and talk about maybe the nexus of One Bigg Island in Space, and then talk about what it does and what it's going to do going forward. But can you maybe take me back to where this came from and how it became what it is today?
Sure. It all started with a meeting Bob had with the people from the Living Hope Ministries in Novi about this project they were involved with in Zambia, where they had built an orphanage, and the orphanage was building a coffee farm so that the orphanage would be more sustainable. And they wanted to see if there was a way for Biggby to get involved. And Bob's like, well, let's go take a look. And he asked me if I wanted to go, and I'm like, yes. And when we got there, we were just completely blown away by the level of commitment and the change that coffee could make in a place. Not only was the coffee supporting the orphanage, but the coffee had also transformed lives of people there in the community. It provided jobs where there had been none. There's a woman in particular who had given up part of her land to the coffee farm in exchange for the promise of employment. And now she's been able to build her own house, and she's built several rental houses, and she's sending her grandkids to school. And I mean, that knock-on change is really powerful. And it's really something that on behalf of Biggby, Bob wanted to be involved in. And from that, we thought about different ways we would tell that story and sort of what would the overall umbrella be. And really what we're trying to do here is shrink the world, right? People are the same everywhere. Everybody wants the same thing. They want a better life for their children. They want to feel safe. They want to have access to food and, shelter. And so the idea of One Bigg Island in Space is that's really what we are. We're all on the Earth, and it's just one big island floating around in space.
Just to reinforce that, one planet, one people, one community, and what mushroomed out of that then, of course, was the mission, the goal of having Biggby Coffee be 50% farm direct by 2023. And we were sort of racing along on that pre-COVID, and 15% of Biggby Coffee is now farm direct. And by farm direct, what we mean is we've built a relationship directly with a farmer, and we're trying to make sure that they are treating their people right, and they're treating the planet right, and that they're investing in their community. But COVID put a pause on that, but we still have plenty of time to get to our 50.
And Bob, the One Bigg Island in Space has been an entity, but was sort of officially rolled out to the Biggby world on Earth Day this year. Can you talk about the decision to do that and sort of what the response has been from the community?
Well, I mean, everybody digs One Bigg Island in Space. There's no doubt about it. There's nothing ugly or bad about it, right? It's just it's all good work for all the right reasons, right? And really, we're just trying to make sure that coffee itself is sustainable, and the people that are producing the coffee are sustainable also, right? And for those that don't know, coffee as a crop is at risk, right? It's at risk because of climate change, where wet areas are getting wetter and dry areas are getting drier. And so, for example, there's a condition that happens called rust on a coffee plant that will essentially defoliate it. And those wet areas getting wetter are getting more and more rust. And so because of that, farms are just shutting down. On the other hand, there's also sort of a nefarious commodity activity, right? We talk about eliminating the brokers and going directly to the farmer. But a lot of these farmers, when they're paid by these brokers and through the traditional commodity pathway, are being paid less for their coffee than it actually takes to produce it. And then the same effect happens, meaning that farms are closing down, right? So we get a chance on this rollout, as you just mentioned, to tell people about what we've been doing, right? And we wanted a slow build up to One Bigg Island in space, because we didn't want to come out and say, okay, we're going to go 50% farm direct, give us a pat in the back, and see you later. We actually wanted to build some relationships so people could see that our intent was sincere. And we wanted to build content, right? And our content is posted on our blog, which is onebiggislandinspace.com with 2 G's. But the other kind of content that we do is sort of coffee authority, authenticity kind of content. And those are through our coffee videos, right? And that really was birthed out of our COVID experience. It's like, okay, we can't go to farms right now, but we could teach people a lot more about coffee techniques, and we could teach people a lot more about coffee in general. And hey, wouldn't that be good too?
Even from the first episode, the authority was of no question, right? You were getting lots of great information. But if you look at that first episode to the one that you just posted, a week ago, you guys have built a legitimate television show. Can you talk about the creative energy between the two of you? Because it has been so amazing to watch this part of it. I mean, the work that you're doing is absolutely, groundbreaking, amazing, and all the things that you should be doing. But then this other thing popped up because of COVID. Can you guys talk about what the process has been and kind of the evolution of this thing that is now literally a television show on YouTube?
Well, first of all, kudos to our son, Dylan, who is the one who has, he'll be like, Mom, I watched that episode. The lighting sucks. You gotta it's like, oh, okay. You guys need to get microphones, so he's been our technical guide from afar. But it was meant to be fun from the beginning. It was something for us to do together. We were, in our condo together for a year, and that's great because we love each other very much and we enjoy each other's company. But to have a great, fun kind of project, just to organize the time in quarantine was pretty special. We decided from the beginning that Bob needed to tap into his inner Mr. Rogers.
Oh, and let me just pause you for a second and say this last episode is spot on Fred Rogers. Like, it is quintessential Fred Rogers from stem to stern.
So that is definitely a part of My Handsome Husband, and it was about turning that dial up to 11, and just making it, much like Biggby itself, just making these techniques, these drinks, these things that we come up, these pieces of equipment more accessible. Because it's really easy to look at, something like the flare and think that maybe you might be able to hit a baseball with it, but how on earth would you make an espresso,
Sure.
And Bob is just really good at breaking that down so it's simple and it's approachable.
Bob, you're coming to us. If you're listening to the audio version, we'll link to the video version. But in the video version, we can see that you and Michelle are not in the same place. And you are in what are known as the OBS Labs, which is this amazing new thing that you guys are doing. Can you talk about when this came to be and what it does?
I mean, the OBS Lab is a little bit of a skunk works for coffee, right? It's where the most creative components can happen. And that's on coffee sampling, because as you can imagine, we get a lot of samples from farms and so on and so forth. So actually cupping those particular samples, but also working on coffee technique. And even when you follow coffee technique from, let's say, manufacturer's recommendation, there's always some tweaks and some twists and some turns that people need to know about and learn about. And, I just sort of live with these processes until I'm comfortable with them, and then try to communicate those to folks in an approachable manner. But, the OBS Lab was created partly as a film studio because although it was charming to come out of our home, at some point our our dining room, our living room, and parts of our guest bedrooms were all housing our lighting, our microphones, our product, and all that kind of thing. And it was a little much, right? So we needed a place where these things could be worked on and developed and so on and so forth. But the other part of the OBS Lab here is we have on order a 7-pound sample roaster so that we can begin roasting these samples when they come in right away, but also to work on those particular roasting techniques too. So it won't be just about tips and tricks on how to make coffee, but for those that are into this, tips and tricks in terms of how to roast coffee too. But OBS will likely end up developing its own single origin coffees based on these farm direct relationships. Some of those will be available directly through Biggby Coffee. Some of them will be available directly through OBS. One Bigg Island in Space is our shortened version of OBS.
Yes, absolutely.
Or it's the other way around, I think.
So, Michelle, what does travel look like for you guys? I mean, you guys just came off of a trip over to Texas and in and around those areas, which I know is a story in and of itself, but not for today. But what does this travel for One Bigg Island in Space look like going through the rest of this year and into 2022?
Right. Well, we are, I think we might have mentioned this before we came on air, but Bob and I are both max backs. And so the first few boxes we have to check on that are family boxes. My mother lives on her own in Virginia. So we've got a trip on the books to go see her. My father-in-law and his wife live in San Diego. And then there's our kid, Dylan, who has been sequestered in his 500 square foot apartment in Seattle for 14 months. And he's going to be max back. So we're, those had to come first. And then we're kind of threading the needle with harvest time for South America and Central America. That tends to be November, December, January, February, kind of that range. It's a little sooner than that in Africa. So we're trying to figure out how we can weave together those trips. And also there is still the issue that even though we may be max backs, not necessarily every country in the world wants us right now.
Sure. Yep.
Some are very difficult to get into, and once you've gotten into them, they're difficult to get home from. So there are just a lot of moving parts, but we're working on that. I would imagine that we will be like August, September, somewhere in there will be our first trip. Might well be to Africa. I don't want to make any promises yet.
Sure.
Definitely will be revisiting our partners in Zambia, but there are some other farms in the region that we are very interested in getting to. Same thing when we go to Central America. We want to go see our partners in Nicaragua, but we've got some great leads in Guatemala and Honduras. And
yeah, there are big things coming. So, I don't think you'll be able to get a hold of us basically either in the fourth quarter of this year or the first quarter of next year. We'll be booked. And, we're just talking about the YouTube videos that we do that we call Bean Basics, and they're posted on the YouTube channel, One Bigg Island in Space. There's another little snippet that we do called Coffee Cocktails, and that's just for fun. Those are drinks that are either made with coffee liqueur, or coffee liquor. But the other two series that we're going to do, so as Michelle is an excellent writer, and that's how we have the beauty of that blog and that storytelling that's really amazing, where you can learn about the farmers and their particular journey and so on. And for us, it's really important to put a name, a face, and a place to every coffee for our consumer, for our owner-operators, and for our baristas. But the other series we'll be adding onto YouTube, one has nothing to do with travel, but it's called How's It Made, right? So like we cover coffee techniques that are basically at home and for the consumer. We cover farm, but we don't cover the manufacturing process. So like, let's say, how's it made from a roasting perspective? But we also will do a series on how's it made from a tea perspective, and how's it made from our sauces, our syrups, and so on for Biggby Coffee. But the last one will be sort of, and you'll appreciate this, a travel series. So while we're in the field, we'll do more this time YouTube videos along with the blog posts, but it'll be sort of like Anthony Bourdain meets Mr. Rogers, right? So Anthony Bourdain in the sense that it's exotic places, but me, from a persona perspective, I can't get it much above Mr. Rogers.
Well, let me just, if you need a camera guy, that show is a show I would like to work on.
Yeah,
So
of course.
if you need a camera guy, Anthony
Of course.
Bourdain, Mr. Rogers, I'm your guy. Let me know.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of our goals, and this may be the ultimate goal for both Michelle and I on a personal level, but is to take as many people we can to Origin, to farm, right? Because it's a life-changing experience, and we've done this already with our partners in Nicaragua. That's in a town called Anotega. The estate is called El Recreo. We've brought owner-operator there. We brought people from the home office. We've brought other people like vendors along. But we have a very special relationship, especially in Nicaragua. We'll probably in the fourth and the first quarter go there 3 times. Each time we'll bring up to 8 to 10 people with us. And so, yes, if you're serious about going, we definitely have you. You don't even have to bring your equipment, so to speak. But here's what we know. When you go, it's a life-changing experience, right? People are so disassociated from where coffee comes from, how it's grown, who are the people that make it, and so on and so forth. But once you go and you have that full understanding, the idea of drinking a cup of coffee changes altogether.
You've thrown this idea out, but the way people would kind of get on that list to know when we're going, where we're going, and what opportunities are, is you'd go to our blog, One Bigg Island in Space, with 2 G's.com, and you'd hit on contact. And you would say, gee, I really want to go to a coffee farm. And while you're doing that, if you want one of those fancy t-shirts, like the one that Bob's wearing on my screen, it's down there, One Bigg Island in Space, we'll send you one free. And so you would tell me what your t-shirt size is and what your home address is. And I'd be happy to send you one. We're not a staff, so it really will be me that gets your email, that packs up the t-shirt, that pops it in the mail, all of that. Bob does sign a little postcard when we.
Oh boy. Yeah. But you know what, Eric, we got 250 people on that list, and we just want more.
Yeah.
But people are turned on by this.
And what I was going to say, Bob, is like you and I have talked over the last year about where coffee came from historically speaking, how coffee became the thing that took the place of beer on the, the working lines when we figured out that probably wasn't a great idea. And then how, we've just gathered ideas around coffee over the next 100 years once we made that switch. And I think what you've seen in the last 14 or 15 months is people are pining to understand their world because everything else doesn't make sense. And if they can just figure out how coffee is made or who that impacts, that gives them something to anchor reality to, because right now it feels really floaty.
That's right. And this is the thing about One Bigg Island in Space. It's not just who it impacts, but how it impacts them, right? So by building relationship with the folks in El Recreo in Nicaragua, for example, they were able to pay their workers more. And that's not easy to do in Nicaragua. You actually have to get government permission to do that. But also, for the first time in their lives, those workers at the end of the season, the permanent workers, were able to receive a bonus, right? And that bonus was $250. And that doesn't sound like a very big bonus here, but there, that might as well have been $10,000. I mean, that is just so much resource for those particular. But for a consumer or even the folks that are working inside of Biggby Coffee to know that the product that we're serving is also doing good in the world and not really costing anybody any extra money. What we're doing is taking money away from brokers and giving it directly to the farmer. It's just really a beautiful thing.
Not only does the farmer know that this year, this is the price they're getting for their coffee, but they know it going forward. So that allows them to make investments in their people and investments in the farm that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. It also gives the employees confidence that, all right, it's good now, but my job's going to be good next year too. So if I want to pay to send my child to school, I can afford to make that investment in my own children because I know I'm still going to have a job next year. It leads to generational change, which is really powerful.
And I don't know anyone who can't be excited about generational change. So, Michelle, one more time, if somebody wants to reach out to you guys, what's the website and how do they do that?
www.onebiggislandinspace, big with 2Gs.com. And you would click on the connect button and send me an email that says if you'd like to go on a farm trip, and also what your t-shirt size is, and also what your home address is. And we'll put you on the list. We'll that list, we call them our t-shirt army. They kind of have the inside scoop on everything OBS. So all kinds of like a regular communication, maybe once a week. I promise you we will not overwhelm you with emails. And I write all of them. So if you don't like them, you can write me back and tell me so. It's not a bot. But that's how you kind of get on the inside scoop.
This idea of label marketing, right? So, you go buy a bag of coffee and it says fair trade and organic on it, right? But there's no context to that, right? So organic just means it's not, there's no petrochemicals in use in the process. Fair trade means somebody along the line is getting a fair wage, a fair price. I'm not really sure. One Bigg Island Space goes a lot farther than that. You have to understand that we won't include somebody in our portfolio that we haven't verified with boots on the ground ourselves. But we're trying to get it beyond you're buying USDA or organic and beyond you're just buying fair trade. You're actually connecting with the people and the place. That is so important to us.
Absolutely. Bob, Michelle, the work that you are doing is absolutely incredible, as I said before. It's always a pleasure to get to spend some time with you guys. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk again soon.
Right on.
Thanks so much.
And there they go. As Michelle was saying, if you want to get in contact because you want to go visit a farm or get more information about farm direct coffee, you do that at One Bigg Island in Space with 2Gs.com. Till next time, make sure you like, review, and share this podcast wherever you're listening to it. I'm Eric Hultgren, and this is the Michigan's Best Podcast.